Welcome to everyone who's just joining. I'm going to give people another 30 seconds and then we'll get going with our call. Keep saying hello from in the chat box, whether you are, whereabouts you are in Scotland or around the world, apparently. I'm joined by some colleagues from Australia. That is incredible. Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. Fantastic. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. And just while we're getting started, and the last few people are joining, just got a wee poll to fill in to hear about, so we can just hear where people are from and your kind of experiences and things like that. So have a go at filling this in if you fancy. If you abhor surveys and can't be bothered, that is also totally fine. It's just a nice little soft entry and helps us as facilitators to get the gist of where people are at and how they're feeling about this topic. We've got a number of speakers who are joining this evening, including from Poverty Alliance, Get Glasgow Moving, and the Better Buses for Strathclyde campaign. We're also joined by Laura from the Dumfries and Galloway bus users group, and we're going to hear from Guy from Friends of the Earth Aberdeen as well. So we've got a nice picture of this campaign across the country. And once we've done that, we're going to have plenty of time, about half an hour, to speak to people in our different regions around the country. And this is important because those of us who've come together for this campaign, we feel that it's the local and regional organising which is the key to securing better buses in Scotland. And we want to make sure there's plenty of space for you to hear from people where you are. So that will be in the second half of the meeting. Thank you to those who are filling in the poll. It's great to see that we've got people actually from all of the different regions, the transport regions across the country. And for those who don't know, these six regions, Highlands and Islands, Grampian, Tayside Central, Strathclyde, South East, South West, these are the regional transport authority areas. So transport in Scotland is actually is regulated according to these areas, and that kind of means that if we want to push for change in our buses, we need to get used to using these kind of big bureaucratic regional ways. And it looks like we've got about half of people here tonight are from Strathclyde, which is wonderful. But we do also have coverage from around the other regions. Yeah, which is wonderful. So we'll hear more about that over the course of the call. And uh, I'm also not surprised to hear that most people on the call feel like the buses are pretty rubbish. Uh, and uh, but there's also some who feel like they're great, and so that's not such a bad thing. We've got good stories to tell about how, yeah, our bus system is fragmented and patchy, but that means different things to different people, and we can also learn from the things that are working in different places. And thank you for those telling us about how you found out tonight as well. It's really helpful. Um, we're gonna begin by hearing from David at the Poverty Alliance. And so I'm going to ask Ellie to get the slides up and running, and we'll, uh, yeah, I'm going to close the poll. Thank you for those who took part in that, and we'll pass right on to David Eyre from the Poverty Alliance. David.
Hi, folks. Thanks very much for having me along. My name's David Eyre, and I'm the Communications Officer for the Poverty Alliance. I wanted to talk a wee bit, first of all, about Scotland Demands Better, which is the kind of inspiration for the name for today's meeting. And I think that's a really important meeting, by the way, and I think we could be looking back on it in a few years' time and thinking this was where the campaign to bring regulation to buses across Scotland really kicked off. So I'm really grateful to be here. This is a photograph of the Scotland Demands Better demonstration, which took place in October last year. More than 5,000 people took to the streets of Edinburgh, demanding better, telling our politicians that the way things are going in terms of poverty, inequality, wages, work opportunities, and transport were not good enough. And it brought together a group of all kinds of different people. The Poverty Alliance has over 400 member organisations across Scotland, brought together many of them, trade unions, and lots of just concerned individuals. So this is a great opportunity to bring people together. And in this photograph, we can see the Better Buses for Strathclyde campaigners, Jerry there and Susie in the background. And it was great to have them. Buses are a poverty issue, and this next slide will show you why. This is from the latest Scottish household survey. People who earn in excess of £50,000 a year, about 6% of them use the bus to get to work. For folk who earn less than 20,000, it's up around 21, 22. Buses are really important for people on low incomes, and it's not just about people in work. We've done work previously, as this slide shows, looking at the links between child poverty and transport. And this work was sorry, Ellie, I think you moved that slide on. Move it on again, sorry. Yeah, sorry, there's something wrong there. But the work that we did looking at the link between child poverty and transport was very clear, you know, that the lack of good access to transport not only locks people in poverty, it just makes it much more difficult for them to get out, because they can't get to education, they can't get to training. And even if they can find work, if the bus services are bad, it restricts what kind of work they can get, where they can get it, and it restricts their work opportunities. There was a great example in Glasgow year before last, where First Glasgow unilaterally decided that they were going to scrap the night buses. That was a disaster for people in Scotland's hospitality economy, most of whom are in low paid work. So that's just one example of how the unregulated bus system just isn't working for people. We were asked by the Scottish Government to speak to arrange for people on low incomes to feed into the Scottish Government Fair Fares Review, which didn't come up with a lot in the final instance, but the opinions that came from people during that process were really interesting. And it showed again that buses are where we should be focusing our efforts in terms of transport if we are interested in providing opportunities for people on low incomes to build a life beyond poverty. So it's interesting that, for example, the Scottish Government has been doing a lot around nationalisation in ScotRail and peak fares, but we're still waiting on support for the £4 million for bus franchising in Strathclyde that I'm sure we're going to hear about a wee bit later on. Buses are the priority for people on low incomes. They really are. If we can move that on. Yeah, sorry, this is an example of how people get affected by poor buses. You know, this was somebody that took part in the research that we did, and it just shows you how important the bus services are. If you can move on again, please. This is what people want, and it's not a lot. They want reliable buses that are affordable, accessible, and meet their needs. And the people in this research were talking about the importance of expanding concessionary schemes. So if we move on to the next slide, you can see that interestingly, I'm just putting this out here at the moment. I don't think it's a focus for the campaign, but the people on low incomes who were involved in that research were also very clear that they thought we should be moving to free public transport in Scotland. They were sceptical about whether politicians would make that happen, but they were clear that that's the direction travel we should be moving in. And I think if that ties in very clearly with the sort of environmental and climate questions that are of importance to Friends of the Earth and to all of us, if we really want a fundamental change in how transport emissions work in Scotland, we need to do something that's very big, and free public transport could be the way to go. But we won't get that without regulation. So in the Scotland Demands Better campaign, there were two main asks that were part of that. Ellie, if we could just move on. That was to expand the concessionary travel, which, as we saw, was one of the asks that came out of the work that we did around the fair fares, and also fundamentally that we catch up with bus regulation that's happening in England, in Manchester, for example. It really is a disgrace, really, that we have had powers over public transport in Scottish Parliament since 1999, and we are way behind some of the English regions now. It's not acceptable. So thank you very much for your time, and I really hope that this is the start of a nationwide campaign to get our buses back under public control. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Lots of virtual applause, and appreciate you bringing that context at the top of our evening. I'm now going to go to Ellie Harrison from Get Glasgow Moving to speak about the Better Buses for Strathclyde campaign and also what we can be doing around the forthcoming Scottish Parliament elections. Ellie.
Thank you very much, Rick. Yeah, so I'm one of the co-founders and committee members of Get Glasgow Moving, a public transport campaign, and I'm here with Susie and Paul, who you'll meet later when we get onto the regional breakout rooms and discussion. So Get Glasgow Moving is one of the organisations that, along with Friends of the Earth and the Poverty Alliance and the STUC, helped to launch Better Buses for Strathclyde in September 2023. So it's a region-wide campaign across the 12 local authorities in the Strathclyde area, which is bringing together a civil society coalition of organisations and groups. We now have more than 50 organisations back in the campaign, and we have the sole aim of putting pressure on our transport authority, Strathclyde Partnership for Transport, or SPT, to use the new powers available to it in the Transport Act 2019. So to bring the region's bus network back into public control using the bus franchising powers, and to set up a new publicly owned operator for Strathclyde to start taking over the bus routes, with the ultimate aim of creating a fully integrated, affordable and accessible public transport network for the whole region. So we based the model for the campaign on a network of similar grassroots campaigns across the north of England. So we wanted to work in solidarity with these existing campaigns, but also to build on their successes. The first of these campaigns was Better Buses for Greater Manchester, which was launched in 2018 and was successful in pushing their mayor, Andy Burnham, to become the UK's first city region to take forward bus franchising. And that was rolled out between September 2023 and January last year to create the new B network, Integrated Public Transport Network. And this is just the sort of thing that we want to see across Strathclyde. So since our campaign was launched in September 2023, we've been mobilising support on an online petition that's hosted on the megaphone platform. It's now signed by close to 13,000 people. We want to get to 13,000 tonight, so please sign if you haven't done already. And we have been doing all we can to put pressure on SPT as they have been developing their Strathclyde regional bus strategy, which they began work on in summer 2023. So we've been trying to get as much media coverage as we can for this issue, and we've been hosting a series of rallies outside SPT's offices to coincide with their board meetings. So our second big rally happened in December 2023 when SPT were in the middle of what they called the options appraisal for the bus strategy. So it was a very crucial time. At that rally, we had speeches from the STEC, from Parents for Future Scotland, and other coalition members. We managed to get more coverage in the Glasgow Times. Then the following January, we ramped up the pressure, launching an e-action, which was hosted by Friends of the Earth Scotland for us to encourage people to email the SPT board directly. The board is made up of local councillors from across the 12 local authorities in Strathclyde. Now, this had a huge impact because many of these councillors had never received so many emails in one day as they did after we launched this action. The following month, we handed in the petition to SPT. By then, it had been signed by close to 10,000 people, which wasn't bad for less than 6 months campaigning. Glasgow Times covered that petition hand-in as well, and this was all building up to Friday the 15th of March 2024, which we were billing as decision day, when SPT would finally say which of the powers they were planning to move ahead with. So we had an amazing turnout in the rain for this rally and a huge amount of media coverage. So this was our first big win of the campaign, with SPT agreeing to move forward with bus franchising. But it was also the start of the first public consultation that SPT launched. So we then had 6 weeks to mobilise people to support the bus franchising plans and plans to set up a new publicly owned operator. And also to oppose SPT's proposal at that time to sign a so-called bus service improvement partnership with the private bus companies, which would have locked us into the status quo and just delayed moving forward with the other options. So we went out on the road around Strathclyde with our first 2 public meetings in Cumbernauld and then in Kilwinning. And we were really delighted with the results from this consultation. More than 3,000 people responded, probably a lot of people on the call tonight, so thank you. 86% support for a publicly owned bus company, 76% support for re-regulating the buses, or franchising as it is known, and most importantly 51% opposed bus service improvement partnerships, or BSIPs. So the full results of the consultation were published in September 2024, and we held our 5th rally outside SPT's offices to celebrate what was our second big win of the campaign, and that was SPT announcing that they would scrap the plans to sign a BSIP. So after this, SPT then went away to draft up the final Strathclyde Regional Bus Strategy, ready to publish at their board meeting the following February, in February 2025. So we were back outside their offices again for our 6th rally in the rain to celebrate, because we are generally very pleased with the final strategy. It is a very clear statement from SPT of their intention to take forward bus franchising. That will make them the first transport authority in Scotland to do so. Which, if they deliver it in the most ambitious form, should give us the integrated public transport network that we desperately need. But this also marked the start of another public consultation. So we had to go back out on the road around Strathclyde on an even bigger tour. So we started in Motherwell last year. We went to Erskine. We then went to Irvine. Thank you if anybody who's on the call was at these meetings. We really appreciate you coming along. To Clydebank, we had 3 bonus meetings that we organised with the Glasgow Eco Trust and Kirkwood and Tenants Residents Association. We were out for Air Pollution Day in collaboration with Parents for Futures Scotland. We were on the May Day March and Rally. We had our final public meeting at the STUC in Glasgow, all before the consultation deadline on the 29th of May, doing everything we could to get people to respond to that consultation. And we were delighted that more than 4,000 people did. That was 1,000 more than had responded to the consultation the previous year. But most importantly, 83% support for SPT's bus franchising plans. This gives them a huge public mandate just to get on with it now. So last September, we held our 7th rally outside their offices to celebrate the final approval of the Strathclyde Regional Bus Strategy. So now SPT are finally moving on to deliver this. So this is where our campaign switches focus to get the Scottish Government to support SPT to deliver these plans, and most importantly, to speed up the process of delivering bus franchising, because unless they do that, we could be waiting another 5 to 6 years before it is fully implemented, because the legislation is so complicated. So in the run-up to the Holyrood election in May, we have made a little animation, which you may have already seen. We're going to screen it now. What we set out to do was to explain as simply as possible what the issues are with the bus franchising legislation and what MSPs need to do to fix it. So I'm going to show the animation now. Hopefully this will work. And then I'll just come back to what our manifesto asks are in the run-up to the election. So here we go with the film.
Where is this bus?
We'll be lucky if it turns up at all.
Why is it always like this in Glasgow?
I know, it feels like we're always being left behind.
I was just in Manchester visiting my brother, and I couldn't believe how good the buses are. They have this new B network, where you can take as many buses as you like within an hour for just £2. And it's so easy to hop on the tram, or a train, or even hire a bike now too. All with the same ticket. And here we are, not knowing if a bus will even show up.
Yeah, I heard it's improved down there because they've taken the buses back into public control, rather than private bus companies being in charge. Now everybody can see how good it is in Manchester. Loads of places in England and the whole of Wales are doing it too.
I saw something about us getting publicly controlled buses in Strathclyde years ago. What happened to that?
The Scottish Government's created laws that make it really complicated. Our local transport authority, SPT, has an uphill battle ahead of them. They face loads of obstacles that just don't exist in England and Wales. And the Scottish Government is hardly giving them any funding to help. And once they get to the end, SPT don't even have the power to decide for themselves whether to go ahead. The Scottish Government's going to make them face a so-called independent panel of experts who could just stop it happening altogether.
That's ridiculous. What can we do to speed things up? I am so fed up of waiting.
We need to get the Scottish Government to make the laws simpler and to support SPT and other local transport authorities to help make it happen. There's an election coming up, so now is our chance to tell them what we need.
Yeah, we need a public transport system that actually works for the people who live here. One that's affordable, reliable, and takes you where you need to go. We just can't wait any longer for better buses.
That's so good. That's fantastic, Ellie. Well done.
Fab. Um, right, I just got one more slide if I can get over to the next thing. Oh, no, God, it's going to play it again. Right. You see at the end of the video, it says, please share it with your MSP. So we've created this very simple e-action. It takes 2 minutes. It will send an email with the link to the video to your MSP. We basically want to get as many of them to watch it as possible, to educate them really about how long it's going to take and what they can do to speed things up. And we have 3 clear manifesto asks. So the first is publishing the franchising guidance. This is to the Transport Act 2019, which has now been delayed by more than 6 years by the Scottish Government, which is an absolute disgrace. That's delayed at SPT. That's why we're only getting to this point now. We want them to simplify the legislation. We're actually drafting an amendment bill, which will just strip out a lot of the unnecessary stuff in the legislation and just make it much easier for SPT to be able to begin rolling this out. It will take at least a year out of the process. And most importantly, we need the Scottish Government to commit funding. So if you can see here, English city regions last year were awarded between 1 billion and 2.5 billion each for public transport improvements, including rolling out bus franchising. So Scottish cities have not received equivalent funding settlements, and that needs to change. Otherwise, we are going to be really left behind. And if you would like to help, please visit our website. We'll be sending the link around afterwards, and maybe somebody can pop it in the chat as well. Sign our petition on Megaphone if you haven't done already. If you tick the box to be informed by email, you'll receive campaign updates. And finally, please email your MSPs. The more of them that get to watch this video, the better.
Thank you, Ellie. And congratulations as well for this really seminal campaign win in the west of Scotland, something that I hope we can take inspiration from across the country over the coming months and years, and bringing it to the attention of our candidates for Holyrood as well. Kyle has posted a link to that online action that you can take in the chat as well. So do have a go at that whilst you're listening to our other speakers. We're now going to hear from Laura Moodie and the Dumfries and Galloway bus users group. So over to you, Laura.
Oh, perfect. Sorry about that. I had a bit of difficulty unmuting. Hi, folks. After hearing from Ellie and what's been happening in and around Glasgow, I'm taking you to a more rural area now. I'm the chair of Dumfries and Galloway Bus Users Group. Dumfries and Galloway is in southwest Scotland. Obviously, Dumfries, quite a large town, but most of the bus network in this area is rural, and that brings with it its own challenges. Can we go to the next slide? So we are one of the bus users groups across the UK. There's 26, I think, at the moment. Bus users groups are there to offer local knowledge and insight, and crucially to raise the voices of bus users. We act kind of as a liaison point between ordinary bus users and the council and our regional transport partnership, Strathclyde, but also act in solidarity. The group kind of came about, it was established in November 2023, but it came about following a couple of fairly high profile campaigns. Way back in 2016, Strathclyde tried to pretty much summarily cut most of our evening and bus services, and there was a successful campaign to stop that. And then there's been a couple of attempts to cut the 101 bus, which is what links Dumfries to Edinburgh. It's the only direct public transport link from Dumfries to the capital, and has been under threat several times. So lots of people have campaigned against that. Those campaigns were successful, but we felt really they were sticking plaster solutions on a wider issue, which is just that the bus service isn't really up to scratch. We secured observer status on the board of our transport partnership in 2024. We have members from all across Dumfries and Galloway. We produce a regular newsletter, and obviously we campaign to improve buses in the region. Can I have the next slide, please, Ellie? So we've published 9 of those newsletters. We've become a contact point for locals to raise concerns about services. We send representatives to those meetings to ask awkward questions and basically be in the room and make sure buses get discussed. There was a lot of focus on roads in Swesstrans prior to us being regular observers. And we do meet with the Swesstrans staff, help them, you know, if they're wanting to do a bit of research, bit of development, bit of consultation. You know, we have a whole group of bus users ready to respond. And we work constructively on all sorts of issues, from bus stop design to changing services and priorities. And we ran a bus day in October to get views and promote routes. Next slide, please, Ellie. So, but the big issue that happened for us was what we call the stagecoach flounce. So Stagecoach operated a virtual monopoly in Dumfries and Galloway for quite a long time. Certainly, they cherry-picked all of our most profitable routes. And then in June last year, they announced that they were going to pull out of the region, giving Swesstrans 6 weeks' notice, essentially, because that's when the contract was to be retendered. They cited a new liability clause in the tender that caused them to do this, although the local bus companies were fine with the liability clause, and we strongly suspect it was just that they didn't particularly want to be held accountable or responsible for the condition of their buses. This sadly led to the closure of 2 bus depots and also led to a number of job losses. And obviously 6 weeks to find alternatives isn't great in a rural area. Our suspicion is this was a deliberate strategy by Stagecoach. It was sort of brinksmanship. They actually still operated a couple of services in the east of the region all the way up to December, but finally pulled out of those in December. They still operate the big bus that links Dumfries and Glasgow, the X74, which is a very busy and profitable route. Can I have the next slide, please, Ellie? So our response, and actually Swesstrans' response to their credit, was thank you, next. So 2 local bus companies stepped into the breach and picked up most of the routes. The council had been working behind the scenes and has actually secured the necessary permits and licenses to operate a number of routes themselves in advance. They are actually stealthily, almost with nobody noticing, now the 2nd biggest bus operator in the region. They run 17 services at the last count, and it actually looks like that might be about to be some more. Some routes were altered. You know, it really was sort of all hands on deck to try and cover things. There was a little mini consultation that happened sort of in the middle west area of the region to try and improve services there. There was a big loss of a bus that links Moffat and Dumfries in the morning, and a Dumfries and Galloway bug member set up a petition and secured its return. There were 600 signatories for that, which has made a big difference. There are ongoing issues. There was something in the news this week about a cut to a bus service that a lot of people use to get out of catchment areas to schools. And Swesstrans also wrote to the Cabinet Secretary of Transport to highlight the issues of vulnerability in rural transport more generally. Can I have the next slide, please? Well done if you can spot the deliberate typo on this slide. So what happens next? So we're wanting to grow the group and continue speaking at meetings. We don't want higher funding for Stagecoach, but we do want more funding for the council to give to Swesstrans to develop that local bus service, so that if we can grow that little service that's happening already, hopefully they'll be in a better position to take on franchising in the future. We're also getting upgrades and replacements of more than 100 bus stops in the region this year. They're printing new timetables, and a shiny new schematic is going to be rolled out. That's something we've been asking for since we were first set up. We're going to get real-time transport information on shelters. I know people in cities will think all of this is small fry, but honestly, in a rural area, this stuff really makes a big difference, and we have not had it. And we're sharing content on promoting bus routes for them to use in marketing communications. The council has recently published a lovely little video. They're working with an arts group locally called the Stove Network to essentially improve their marketing communications around buses. So they've created a little film about how great the buses are. But ultimately, it's use it or lose it time in a lot of rural areas. We really need to have more folk using the buses. And it's really challenging because for a lot of rural areas, I live really out in the sticks, there aren't buses at weekends or there aren't buses in the evening at all. And that's leading to people feeling effectively under curfew. So it's becoming quite a big social issue, but hopefully by taking these steps, we'll make buses more appealing, and that will encourage the council to take the leap and pursue franchising of IS Westrans. And that is me.
Thank you so much, Laura. Really getting us into the picture of the challenges in a rural area, and I think we can see those differences of failing services in places like Dumfries and Galloway, and how we've maybe got different challenges from some of the cities, but also different rural areas are different from different other parts of the country as well. So we've got a lot of different problems to solve, but we've also got things in common that we can find when we work together, which is fantastic. So I'm next going to hear from Guy Ingerson, who's going to tell us a little bit about how things are shaping up in the Northeast. So over to Guy.
Sorry, I was also having muting and unmuting issues. How to follow on from Ellie and Laura is a challenge, and I'm not going to pretend that we're anywhere near as far along as they are in tackling this issue. But in the Grampian region, we've just started the process of creating a campaign, and the working title for that right now is Better Buses for Grampian, sort of modeled and inspired on the things that have happened in Strathclyde and elsewhere down in England and Wales. That lanky loon in the middle there is me with the rest of the team in Aberdeen, and Kate, who's also in this call. And we have had the same sort of problems and issues that are happening elsewhere in Scotland. In the Grampian region, there is a mix. So we have a very large city and then a huge swathe of rural areas and commuter towns that are incredibly poorly served by public transport at the moment. There is a regional campaign for bringing back rail services to some of these areas. So that's the campaign for North East Rail. And they've done a fantastic job in creating cross-party support and public buy-in for that. But there is nothing at all around buses. And as you would have heard from a rep from the Poverty Alliance, so many people who are on lower incomes especially are reliant on bus services, but more generally, people are more likely to be using the bus for daily commute and daily activities over the train across both the city and the region. So just to give a bit of history, you can partially blame the people of Aberdeen for the creation of First Bus, only partially. First Bus came into fruition when First Grampian and the Grampian Regional Transport Company were privatised, and they formed one of the nexuses of First Bus. So apologies to all for that. We should have resisted more hard colleagues in Lothian. But that's how that sort of started. And at the moment in the Grampian region, they dominate the city, so Aberdeen, whereas Stagecoach dominates services in Aberdeenshire. Very similar to what Laura and others have experienced, Stagecoach have been really bad at prioritizing high profit routes at the expense of the convenience of other people. And in the city, they've been doing the exact same. So many of the routes aren't circular, for example, which people would like to see. Many of the rural communities in Aberdeenshire are not connected. You have to go into the city and then back out to go to those communities if you're going by bus. And that's just not working for people. So the idea of this campaign was to get buses back into public control so that they work for the public instead of working for private profit. So with that in mind, we have organized our first wave of meetings. So we're trying to get as much public buy-in, views, ideas as possible. So we've set up a couple of public meetings, 3 in the city and 1 currently in Aberdeenshire, with hopefully more to follow. So we have our first meeting is this Saturday, so super, super soon, on the 28th of February, and we're meeting at Inchgarth Community Centre, so the south of the city. So we're covering people in the south of the city. We then have another meeting, this time in Peterhead on the 14th of March, to cover the Buchan area that's really poorly served by buses, I might add. Then we have another meeting in the north of the city in Northfield Community Centre on the 21st of March. And then we have one that's tailored specifically to the disabled community. Disabled people make up 25% of the population generally, and their needs are often overlooked. I'll give you an example. My mum, when she was working, worked in social care, and taking people on group outings, if you had multiple people in a wheelchair by bus, was an absolute nightmare. And they would only allow one wheelchair user, for example, to be on the bus at a time, which meant all the other people had to wait for the next bus and the next bus. So an area where they were having an activity to back to their home could take up to 2, 3 hours, which is crazy. So we've got a meeting specifically tailored to them on the 23rd March at the Len Ironside building. And we're going to be looking at how disabled people, their support workers and carers could get a public transport network that works better for them as well. So yeah, that is where we're at. We are at the very beginning stages of this, and we've spoken to our colleagues in Australia as well. So I was glad to see some of them were here to get some ideas, not just from people in the UK, but from around the world about how we can actually either work together or look at each other's campaigns and be inspired by them. So yeah, if you want to get involved in any of the campaigns in the Grampian region, I'm going to put my email in the chat and you can get in touch with me and I will make sure that you're informed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Guy. That's wonderful. And I think we can see the pattern of this effective campaign that's been so successful in Strathclyde spreading around Scotland. It's really, really exciting. If you're in the northeast of Scotland, Aberdeen, Aberdeenshire, and you think you might be interested, you can just drop Guy an email. His contact is in the chat there. And also Kyle has shared the link to the up and coming meeting at the weekend. There's going to be more of those. So get in touch with Guy, or you can follow Friends of the Earth Scotland on our various channels. I just wanted to say a few words about where Friends of the Earth Scotland, I suppose, like why we feel like this is an important issue to be acting on. And then once we're done with that, we're going to go into our regional breakout rooms. For those who don't know, this is a monthly members meeting for Friends of the Earth Scotland. So shout out to Friends of the Earth Scotland members who've joined us this evening. It's wonderful to be able to use this space in collaboration with other organisations. But most of you will be familiar with Friends of the Earth as working on climate and environmental justice. But we feel that the transport injustice is both local and global, and it's really important to connect those things. That the broken transport system which we are dealing with is a cause of misery for many people and isolates communities, and it's also a major environmental catastrophe as well. It's the largest sector. It's the most polluting sector in terms of carbon emissions. So we've got a number of different problems that we can solve by getting buses back under public control. If we can go to the next slide, please. So why do we think this is important for Friends of the Earth Scotland? Well, we want to be able to harness this frustration and anger from people into things that we can actually make tangible improvements that make our communities wealthier, greener, and more connected. We think campaigning on something like the buses can create hope, build a vision for a transport system run in the service of communities. And we really, really need some hopeful campaigning right now. I think this is a really important contribution that we can make. And we want to get organised more broadly as well. So when we get organised in our communities and neighbourhoods, when we connect with people on our street and in our local community, we open up opportunities for other conversations, for making new connections, and to be able to challenge other social and environmental injustices. So there's lots that we can win by campaigning in this way. If we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Yeah, and our focus, as has been talked about already tonight, is about that regional public control. So using local community organising, collaborating regionally to get that regional public control, following in the wake of the success of the Strathclyde campaign. And we think if we can get this achieved in Scotland's regions, then there are many other things that we can do to get better buses, but this is the first thing we want to focus on. Next slide, please. So we produced a campaign plan and a campaign pack that we're excited to share with people in the coming weeks and months. And the focus of it is really about this local organising. So we want to encourage people to get together in your neighbourhoods or your towns and build that big base of support. So, rather than just going straight to our decision makers, to our councillors and MSPs, and thinking we can kind of convince them that this is a great idea, but actually we need to build that upwelling of support brick by brick, so that we've got a really strong foundation, and it's not really possible to ignore us anymore because we've got those numbers. And it's really inspiring to hear how there's those tens of thousands of people that signed that Strathclyde campaign demand. We need to do this in other parts of the country. We need to go door by door and talk to people on the street in order to get that kind of support. We want to encourage people to be doing this in local groups. And if you're interested in starting a Friends of the Earth group, then that's something we would love to support you with. But there's lots of other community groups who could be a vehicle, pun intended, to organise this campaign locally. And then once we've got that support, then we can organise regionally and push for that final demand with our councillors. So if we go to the next slide, please. Yeah, and so if that sounds like something that you think is exciting and that perhaps you could play a part in your community, here are some things that we will be providing in the coming weeks and months. We will be organising some kind of a training day, perhaps once or twice over the course of this year. We've got a campaign pack which is nearly ready to be circulated. We'll have a full-time member of staff able to support people who want to campaign on this locally. And they're starting actually in just 1 month. And we also want to make spaces like this one this evening to bring people together, to make strategies and to share their skills with one another. And that might be in-person things, that might be online things and so on. So if that sounds useful to you, then please consider joining Friends of the Earth Scotland, sign up to our email list, connect with us on social media, and ask us for what is yours. Like, we want to be a resource to support the better folk campaigning for better buses and be useful. So to make use of Friends of the Earth Scotland. Next slide, please. Yeah, okay. So bear that in mind, that we've got a number of, obviously you've heard from different organisations this evening about the ways in which both Friends of the Earth Scotland and Get Glasgow Moving and Poverty Alliance can be supporting and connecting with campaigning in different places. So bear that in mind when you're when we go into the breakout groups, and you can think about how you can make use of these resources when you want to act locally. I'm going to pass now to Susie, who's going to explain a bit about this, the regional nature of this campaign and this really beautiful map, which has been made especially for this evening, is my understanding. Susie.
Thanks, Rick. Yeah, I'm Susie. I'm from Get Glasgow Moving, and I've been involved with Better Buses for Strathclyde for a couple of years now, and it's been really great to hear the stories, and reassuring in a way to hear that a lot of the problems that we have with buses are shared elsewhere in the country. So yeah, really inspiring as well to see that things are being done about it. So this map here is just kind of to explain the rationale for the breakout rooms, because I know it was the poll was maybe causing a little bit of confusion to begin with. So we've got different regional transport partnerships in Scotland who theoretically should be in charge of the governance of transport And so what we kind of think would be good would be to use that sort of infrastructure that already exists to kind of move towards more public control of our bus network. But the reason as well for doing things in a more regional sense is that whilst a lot of the problems can be traced directly back to bus deregulation for the problems with the buses, each individual area will have its own specific problems and its own specific advantages and things. So one of the first breakout room is Highlands and Islands, which will include Shetland as well, if we've got anyone from Shetland on the call. And so those are covered by High Trans for the Highlands and Islands, sort of close to the mainland, and then Z-Trans for Shetland. Which are the two separate RTPs, and it's quite exciting times in these regions because they're benefiting from the £2 fare cap trial in these regions. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But these are areas where, as you can imagine, because you've got a high proportion of rural, the bus services are not profitable. So they've had a lot of public subsidy over the years, for a long time, and Highland Council are actually the first in Scotland to actually set up their own municipal bus company, so the first one since Lothian Buses that never was privatised because the private companies just weren't running routes there. And then we've also got Grampian, so that's covered by Nestrans, which covers Aberdeenshire and Aberdeen. And so you've seen already what's starting to happen there, and the breakout rooms will be a great opportunity for people in those areas to discuss what happens next and think about these public meetings and how to get involved. Tayside and Central is covered by TACTRAN, which encompasses areas around Dundee and then a lot of rural Perthshire and things like that as well. So that's got sort of similar contrasts to what we see in the Strathclyde region, where you've got some urban and then you've also got large rural areas, and we see that this could be a key battleground in the future for bus regulation as well, if there's appetite for people to set up their own campaign. And then the Strathclyde region, you've heard a lot about the Better Buses for Strathclyde campaign. In that breakout room, anybody from that area can discuss further what the next steps are and how we can make sure that bus franchising really is a success and actually gives us the bus service that we need in the Strathclyde region. And then in the southeast, which is quite an interesting mix because it's got Lothian, which held on to their public bus company. So Lothian Buses is just the shining light for bus services in Scotland, but it's not so good elsewhere. So in the Borders Council have quietly been taking over bus services down there. So that's resulted, I think, in some improvements down there. But then in areas around Falkirk and in Fife as well, you're just completely abandoned to the private companies and whether or not they want to cut your bus service. So that's, again, an interesting mix of different issues there. And then in the southwest, that's Dumfries and Galloway is where you'll find Laura and our excellent bus users group. So you'd be able to hear about what's next there and what you can do. So
Excellent. Thank you, Susie. Just a couple of things to draw your attention to for the breakout groups. There are some questions to just as a bit of a prompt when you're to help you think about what you might want to structure your conversation. The breakout rooms will close at 10 to 8 sharp, where we'll come back together and we'll ask the facilitators to share 30 seconds on how your call went, and particularly if you have any next steps that you want to draw attention to. And lastly, just to mention, there is a WhatsApp group that we've created for tonight, particularly for people who might be interested in pushing for better buses in and around the forthcoming Scottish Parliament elections. So if you fancy connecting with other people who are bothered about this over the next few months, then do join that WhatsApp group. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the main room. Just waiting for a few people to keep coming back in. I think especially the Strathclyde group went right up to the wire. The exciting West Coast chat. see how we're doing. 25 people. We had well over 100 people on this call, which is really exciting, and I hope we can build on that foundation as we get the message out for this campaign in our communities and regions and so on. Let's see, 65 people. I think that's about everyone. I think everyone's back from the breakout room. So we're going to get straight into it and hear how everyone got on, and I'm going to go south to north. So if we can start with Laura. Some breakout. There's still some breakout routes filtering back, but I think that's okay. So we'll get people when we get them. But yeah, let's go first to Laura for a quick update from the southwest, and in particular, if there's anything you've thinking about how you take this forward, Laura.
Yes, the one person there who wasn't already a member of the bus users group has agreed to join, so that's how we'll be taking things forward. So that's very exciting. We talked about the bits of the community that are worst served by the current bus network, and we felt that was workers, actually, especially shift and evening workers, sort of people in their late teens, maybe working part-time. It's very difficult to get bus services sort of working hours. And that led us on to talking about the hospitality sector in general, and how businesses in that sector are missing a trick by not wanting better buses or fighting for better buses, because effectively there's a nighttime curfew in Dumfries and Galloway, unless you live in one of the really big towns. So people can't get to work, and also people can't go to the pub, which they might want to do. We talked a bit about older people, worries about missing the last bus, meaning that they tend to get the bus before that, so it really curtails their social life, getting out and about. And we talked about the impact on cultural venues and the perennial problem of east-west travel, that is really hard to actually transverse the full region by bus. You're really focused on the main towns. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that was it really.
Thank you, Southwest. Okay, let's go to the southeast of Scotland, Lothian, Fife borders, Falkirk, Clacks, and we're going to hear from Susie. Susie, how did you get on?
We got on great. Yeah, I don't know there was a plan that I don't know if I want to let the residents of Fife speak on the plan. And
what was the plan from the residents of Fife? Can you tell us, Susie?
We talked a lot about the anger recently at Stagecoach cutting services, and that there was a public meeting in Tayport that was really well attended, talking about these proposals. And there's a plan now for them to get together again and talk about setting up their own campaign for in the region to try and tackle these bus cuts, and then once that starts to get established, bring in other areas of the region that maybe aren't so acutely affected as Northeast Fife and other cut-off areas in Fife. But yeah, it was really inspiring to hear so much energy and people enthusiastic about trying to do something about these problems.
Fantastic. That's really exciting that something's getting moving. And perhaps I might ask someone who's involved with that to share a contact or some way that they could get in touch or engage with what's going on in Fife. If you could post that in the chat box, that would be really helpful. Additionally, in the chat box, you'll see the link to the WhatsApp group we've made if you're interested in taking this forward from tonight, but not sure how else to do that. Join our little WhatsApp group. Casca, thank you, Casca. Is that for a contact for the Fife group? Is that what that relates to? Yeah, lovely, fantastic. Okay, let's go to Strathclyde, Ellie and Paul.
Paul, are you feeling better?
Hello. Yes, I was having difficulty with unmuting. So we discussed a lot of quite common problems I think that people are facing across all of Scotland with buses. Mainly heard from people in rural areas where the services are not very frequent. Heard from people in South Ayrshire where the service is only once an hour into Ayr. Heard from people in North Ayrshire where the last bus back from Glasgow to North Ayrshire is at 5:15 in the evening. So if you miss that, then you're stuck. We had a lot of comments about people maybe feeling unsafe on buses or the cleanliness of the buses themselves. And people being unable to access, but so people in wheelchairs, people using buggies, and even people with bikes. We had an example of someone witnessed some children being split up because they couldn't all get on the bus at the same time because they all had bikes. But I did want to point out some of the positive things that we talked about, because these are all the complaints that I think everyone is well versed in. But we heard from someone who talked about SPT's My Bus service. So people who are not familiar with that, it's a bookable service. It's like a dial-a-bus that's run by SPT. And that was described as being fantastic. That was someone said that was really good. And also we heard from Ian from Straven Climate Action, who they're a community transport organisation, and they run a bus from Straven into Glasgow. And he was talking about how it was cut by the private operator because they said that it wasn't profitable. But actually, that maybe wasn't the whole story, and that it's actually running really, really well. Even though it's now not designed to make a profit, it actually is returning enough money anyway to keep it running and expand the service from what it initially was. So, basically don't necessarily always trust the private operators when they cut the service because they say that it's not profitable.
I might have to ask you to just have one more sentence, Paul, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that can be fine. I can leave it there.
Oh no! Now I feel awful. Well, I was leaving on a cliffhanger. Have you got a next step from Strathclyde? What's coming up?
Next step? Well, we are having a transport hustings towards the end of April ahead of the election, which Ellie maybe mentioned earlier. I can't remember. We don't have a firm date for that, but if you follow the action and keep up to date, then tick the box to get emails, then you'll get contacted about that.
That's fantastic. And yeah, we're planning some Friends of the Earth hustings in different towns around Scotland as well. So there'll be other opportunities to bother your candidates through that. Okay, let's go to Tayside and Central. And I believe that Kate is going to be feeding back.
Yeah, my cat's just decided to join for this. She wasn't interested until right now. She loves the spotlight. Yeah, we were quite a small group, but we had some good discussions. We were talking about some of the problems with particularly rural access and access to nature. Someone was making the point that there's some really amazing places in the region that you just can't access without a car, and that obviously restricts who was able to get there. And we were talking about even in some of the less rural places, like within Stirling, it can take an hour to get to places like the council leisure centre, and experiences of people not being able to get to work, or it taking a really long time to get to work. So kind of common stories across the country, I guess. And they've been. Yes, we were also talking about, so there's going to be some Friends of the Earth hustings, and there'll be one in kind of Falkirk, Stirling area, so that might be an opportunity to raise things. We're talking about there's going to be a youth hustings as well, and yet there's an issue particularly facing young people, so potentially promoting that. And then we know there's interest from people in the Friends of the Earth Tayside group, so linking some people up with that group to hopefully take forward a campaign in that region as well.
Thank you so much, Kate. Sounds like there's some good plans for next steps in Tayside, Perthshire, Stirling area. We're heading further north now, and we'll go to Guy in Grampian. Guy.
Hi, yeah, my internet connection is a bit unstable, so if I just cut off, just carry on without me. So yeah, we spoke about similar issues that others have looked at. So the fact that the buses and getting them better is a huge priority for communities. The de facto curfew in many rural areas, the lack of job opportunities that the lack of access to transport is creating for many people, particularly young people who pass but can't actually use it because there aren't buses available, or they're unreliable or expensive. We also talked about some of the success or failures of some groups. So Bill Benham had success in trying to get a bus reroute, and we were looking at Transport Action Kincardine and some of the successes or non-successes that they've had. And we were looking also at there was a campaign idea that I absolutely adore that came out of this. So there was a race the bus between Methlick and Inverary, and the runners actually beat the bus. So I think that's a fantastic idea
That's
for.
incredible.
It's a terrible indication of the services there, but I think it's a brilliant campaign idea for any group across Scotland. If they've got people who are fit and healthy enough to do that, fantastic. It won't be me. I will not be running to Methlick or Inverurie. I am not that fit. And we were also talking a little bit about the expense. So £20 for an all-day ticket from some rural areas to commute into the city, which is ridiculous if that's a day return. And we were talking about how the fact that crosslinks aren't there, but radial ones are often, and that causes other problems when it comes to disconnecting communities. So that's.
Have you got a quick next step for us, Guy?
Yes, so the next steps, obviously, in Grampian are the 4 meetings that we've got. And we've also got made some connections. So we were a small but mighty group. So some of us are going to stay in touch. And some of these other groups that were mentioned, I personally plan on getting in touch with as well.
Thank you very much to Grampian. Okay, finally, we've made it all the way to the top. Highlands and Islands, can we hear from Morag?
Hello. Yeah, I'm give a whistle-stop tour of what we were chatting about. A lot of stuff that we've already been talking about, but I suppose with a bit more of a Highlands and Islands slant. I guess the biggest thing I think that probably came up was accessibility, and for lots of different reasons. Things like buses might be able to take one wheelchair and therefore they can tick their box to say that they're accessible, but that doesn't mean any more than one wheelchair can get on the bus, and also it doesn't mean people with other access needs can actually get on the bus. We talked about how pretty much all the buses that you can get around the Highlands and Islands are big coaches, and they're not necessarily the best use of vehicles like for those particular roads, and how actually, you know, smaller buses that can be a bit more like get around easier might well be like better suited to different parts of the Highlands and Islands. We talked about connectivity and how, you know, the 1 or 2 buses that there are a day in certain places don't even connect with the other 1 or 2 buses there are, or the ferry timetables. And as someone that grew up in the Outer Hebrides, I can certainly resonate with that one. Also, we talked a bit about how some bus routes in some parts of the Highlands and Islands appear to be more designed for the tourists who use them rather than the local people that actually need to use those services on a day-to-day basis. So, for instance, like summer timetables that might have lots of different options and winter timetables that are pretty bleak. And yeah, in general, we heard about like school kids who can't get, you know, it's really difficult for them to get back for their after school activities, and families who are moving so that like that's more possible. Yeah, I think that was probably as much as I can fit in now. But yeah, we agreed to sort of stay in touch and join the WhatsApp group and start sort of connecting and finding ways we might be able to take these conversations forward.
Wonderful. Thank you, Morag. And a useful reminder as well, yeah, that you can, if people didn't have an obvious next step or place to carry on those conversations, then you can use that WhatsApp group to do that. Fantastic. Thank you so much for bearing with us as we are running 4 minutes late, which is definitely better than the average stagecoach bus in Aberdeenshire. More bus-related gags available in future meetings. This is a little plug to, if we could just go back one slide, Ellie. Thank you so much. A public meeting taking place in Aberdeen. So if you know anyone in Aberdeen, get them along on Saturday. We'd love to have you at the Inchcath Community Centre. And then next slide. As I mentioned before, Friends of the Earth Scotland, we are a national membership organisation. Many of you already members of us, which is fantastic. You can join for £1 a month, and we'd love for you to do that. And one of the things we do together as an organisation is we have monthly meetings like this, and our next one is about how to talk about climate action amidst rising anti-net zero sentiment from the far right. So that's and they're the last Wednesday of every month. So the next one's on the 25th. So go to the Friends of the Earth Scotland website if you'd like to join us and take part. I think that's it. We're going to send her out an email tomorrow with the recording of this and all of those links and next steps and things. So please stay in touch and look out for that. And it just remains for me to say thank you so much to all of our speakers this evening and for all of your contributions and fervent participation in our regional chats. For me, it's been great to hear all of the ideas and creativity people are coming forth with, as well as the frustrations and enthusiasm to get campaigning on addressing them. If I could ask the team who helped to run this call, if you're able to stay for 5-10 minutes, then that would be really appreciated, and we can just have a quick debrief. Otherwise, we'll say good night, and I hope to see you very soon. Thank you.